Well, hey, everybody. I really appreciate you joining us today. This is a really important conversation about how sales teams should close the loop with their marketing teams. I've got Keith Enix, who's the CEO of Fannit, and I've got Chris Fink. He's the director of client services for Fannit. And so whether you're doing this for your business or with clients, but this is for business owners specifically who maybe think that they're not in the right place with marketing and sales. So welcome, gentlemen. Good to have you guys.
Yeah, it's awesome to be doing this one. I'm really excited about this particular episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Glad to be here.
We've got plenty of years of experience in battle scars here. So it's like I tell my son, I'm teaching you things because I've made all these mistakes. That's why I'm talking to you about them. So one of the things that's important as we get in, before we get into all of this, is really understanding the stage of business that you're in, for the folks listening. And those stages, they're listed here, but think about the revenue, the total annual revenue you're doing, how many employees you have, what your team looks like. Is it just you as the owner, or, do you have multiple team members leading multiple teams? Along the way, you have different business challenges as you get into this, and marketing challenges. And one of the things that we know to be true, when you get to a level where you're kind of at the top end of what I would call the steady operators, where you're pushing on the $1 million mark, you're going to start to see a push and a pull between marketing and sales and what the business is doing. And then, of course, the ever-present, how much does it cost? What are you spending on it? Why is this important? So just think about those as a backdrop and think about your business as you get into this. And what we've learned is that there are versions of closing the sales loop along each part of these journey, each part of this. So just be thinking about that. So Chris, as we talk about the different pieces of the sales loop, there's a marketing side, and your team handles that marketing side for Fannit clients, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, if you're thinking about the sales loop, then I guess the question that everybody would probably ask themselves at some point, are you just throwing money into marketing but not really sure what's working? Or people say, what's my ROI going to be? Well, it depends. So the universal answer in most marketing agencies is, well, it's going to depend. And everybody gets frustrated with that. And I can tell you about a business that spent thousands and thousands on marketing but never really communicated results back to their agency. I could tell you about that story because it was my business. I was the one doing it. I wasn't the one fulfilling that role. And so it was where I got to really, and it was my own frustrations that brought this to me. And then, now it's great that I get to be part of that solution from the other side of that conversation. Because in this area, when we get to work in client services, we do all the things you got there right at the top. Like, we can generate traffic. We can bring people to a landing page or a website. We can work on optimizing your lead conversion rate via, forms and calls and key events, and conversion elements. And through that, we can drive leads, right? And get leads to the business. But where it stops right there, if it's a one-sided effort. So if people treat us like a vending machine, right? They treat your advertising like a vending machine. They just put money in and expect leads to come out. Then to a certain degree that happens, we're going to drive some leads. We're going to get some conversion opportunities. But if we don't know those things in the bottom part of that screen that you have there, if we don't know how many quotes you're getting, how many sales you're getting from those quotes, we don't know if we're getting you the right leads. We don't know if we're getting the leads that have the highest intent, the best sector of the audience potential out there to say, hey, we're getting the people that close at a higher rate. And so this is where this whole thing comes into, really getting a solid return on your investment. If we now start to think of it as something other than a vending machine, right? And we have a different model where there's participation, we're working together and providing feedback. So if I'm working on your account and you provide me feedback on the number of quotes and sales, conversion rates, and the revenue that you're getting, the average revenue size, are you getting the good jobs? Are you getting the weak jobs? Are you making big sales or multiple product or multiple service line sales? Or is it just one and you're getting negotiated down to the bottom. It's a race to the bottom for, and getting compressed margins. So all of that feedback, when that loop happens, then we've got something that we can actually drive.
It's interesting because you're basically saying there's two parts of the responsibility for growing sales.
Yeah. Yeah, I am saying that. Exactly. Yeah. For anybody that enters into a relationship with an agency, whether you're on the agency side or the business side, there has to be accountability and participation from both elements. We still have clients that do this, that are guilty of it. And we ask them for feedback and they're like, oh yeah, things are good. Well, how good? Well, I don't know. Things are good. We're up over last year. We're up over last month. Okay, but let's get more. And we don't get that feedback that allows us to keep those cascading benefits until something goes wrong and things fall off. And then they're like, oh my gosh, the leads suck or volume is terrible. And you guys got to do something. What are you doing? Well, we could have been doing these things if we had been holding each other accountable and having this dialogue and both fulfilling our roles. So we go to work doing what we know how to do, and we put the business, our clients, at bat with opportunities, and then they get to go sell. But then they have to tell us how that comes together so that we can do what we do better.
I love what you're saying, Keith. The reason why I wanted to have you on is because you've got a perspective that is more on the lower part of this loop as a business owner. So talk to me about, as you hear Chris talking about this, about marketing's responsibility and kind of the sales loop in general, the two pieces to it. Give me your perspective on the ROI side.
Yeah. Well, the hardest thing about being a business owner is typically as you scale into your business, you go from being a doer in your business to operating more in your business, working on your business. Typically, the role that you manage to is more of a sales role / operator in your business. And then beyond that, you would just be operator, and then potentially beyond that, owner, investor in your company. But as you go through those roles, it changes your mind because you're thinking sales. And so you'll go to marketing and you'll have this expectation of just get me more leads. But the problem is you're treating it like that vending machine, right? And so I've heard across the gamut, and here's what I typically find of hardscape owners who are smaller versus larger. The smaller ones, it's as bad as I don't have time to focus on marketing, so I'm just going to throw money at this. And let's use pay-per-click as an example, Google Ads pay-per-click. Typically, I'll find they don't have tracking in place, and they're just spending money and spraying and praying and hoping that it actually is going to produce some lead volume for them. Whereas if you get past the, let's say, $1 million mark, business owners have a little bit more time to spend in sales, but still there's more of that vending machine mentality. There's not the close the loop in place. Maybe they have some tracking on some parts of their marketing, but it's not really there. And they really need somebody to come in who knows how to put the proper tracking in place and also keep it up, because inevitably you're going to have stuff that breaks,
Right.
Yeah. So that is typically what I see for on the hardscape side, with not just our company and how we grew into closing the loop, but also with other hardscape owners.
Yeah. This idea, I love this idea, the vending machine. Chris, when you brought this up, I was like, oh yeah, that is what a lot of people think. Like, I don't have time for this. I need to get a quick snack out of the vending machine. So I'm going to go throw some money in there and run my credit card, because now all the vending machines, the modern ones, have credit card. And I'll get my prize out at the end, I get a pick. And actually it's a little bit more where you have to communicate and you have to learn from each other. So the other part of this analogy, what is it actually like? Now, it might not be as intense and as fast as, Formula One races, but you've got the pit crew boss, you've got the driver, and you've got the car and the track, and everything's monitored. And one of the biggest pieces that I hear you talking about, Chris, is if marketing is the pit crew guy, the driver is our sales. And it would be like those two people in a Formula One race not talking. Yeah. And maybe we're managing, or maybe we're monitoring part of what's going on with the car, but only parts of it, because sales is a critical piece. And so is marketing. And so the loop is making sure you're monitoring it, all the necessary things. And it doesn't have to be everything. I know we've at times gone crazy on what we monitor, and just, it's like, oh, well, we don't really need to monitor that. Just because we could. But the basics, and then the communication part, which is a critical piece. As I show this picture, what emotion comes to your mind, Chris?
I don't know about emotion, but my reaction to it is that it's a really great way to think about how symbiotic this whole relationship needs to be, and how a lot of business owners, they fall prey to one of the most common things that can happen, which is they treat marketing like an expense, not an investment, and then they treat it like it's a set it and forget it. Now, can you imagine if you took that Formula One car, you put a driver in it, and you're like, okay, go that way, and you just assumed that they're going to win a race? Like, of course not. But you don't put eyes on things until something breaks, right? So businesses, they're running their business. They're managing their team, their clients, their internal things, their consumables and services and products. There's a lot to do. So they don't look at the driver. They don't ask the driver, hey, man, are you tired? You need something to eat? They don't ask that. How's the tire pressure? They don't check that until it comes into a pit. And then all of a sudden it's panic. Oh my gosh, they're tired. We have to yank them out of the cockpit. There's not enough gas in. The engine is failing. The transmission's slipping. The tires are weak. And any one of those things are part of this whole symbiotic, this whole relationship. So if we're doing most of that marketing, and let's just say we're the engine, we might be that, but there's the internal sales team is the driver. Okay. The driver can be the best driver in the world. You could have the best sales team on the planet. And yet, if we can't get the car across the start line, you're not really going anywhere. In the same token, we could build the best car. Light, clean, handles great, corners on rails, super fast, super responsive. And yet, if there's a terrible driver, they're never going to win a race.
Yeah.
So those two things have to work together, and they have to communicate. The driver has to provide feedback to the pit. Pit has to give driver insights on, hey, there's a bump in the road coming, turn left, all of those things. And so, I mean, I think it's just such a great analogy that when I look at this and I just think about it, like, I just can't stop smiling because it's so true.
Yeah, it's wicked true. And, the normal communication that happens on a regular basis, in this case, it's usually monthly. It's just a matter of starting to have that level of conversation and getting used to it. And when you do it for the first time or start doing it for the first time, you're like, why are we talking about this again? Oh, yeah. And it just, once you do this, once you operate at this level, it's almost like it's tough to go back. Keith, what's your perspective on this picture?
Yeah, just to take it from the marketing side. So let me take it, I guess, from a business owner to a marketer. One of the things I think that's frustrating for business owners looking at the marketer and the marketer kind of having an attitude of just let me do my job and don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever experienced that? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
It's like, hey, why aren't we getting results? And almost the owner feeling or salesperson feeling, I can't even talk to this guy because if I do, he's going to have an attitude and he's not going to work with me, right? He's going to act like it's my fault, How
about this? They send an automated report.
Yeah.
And the owner looks at the report and goes, I have no idea what that
What is this? Yeah. And the marketer's like, what? It's all there, What's wrong?
Yeah. Communication, big part of that. That's so funny. And by the way, we used to make these mistakes. So when you think of the campaigns that you're running, you could be running different types of marketing campaigns depending on, where you're at. There's a lot of stuff that we do to drive inbound leads, paid leads, paid advertising, organic SEO stuff. There's social. You might have a referral campaign. When you're talking to home service contractors and B2C, there's not a lot of outbound. You're not calling people and saying, hey, do you want to, we got you on a list and do you want to, that's more B2B stuff. But so if you talk about inbound marketing and the campaigns you're running with your agency, the part of it is understanding that depending on where those leads come from, you might have to have a different approach or different things set up to handle that. Chris, when you look at this part of the loop and think about, all right, let's get into specifics around the different types of campaigns that we could be running. And I just listed a few here.
Sure.
There could be a lot more, but these are kind of the basics. How do you want to talk to sales about the different types of leads you're bringing them from these campaigns?
Yeah. So I think the biggest leak happens in this circle breaking down, or this loop breaking down, is which leads convert and which don't. So just starting at that very basic level, like, if I'm running a campaign for a client and I have a PPC or a Google Ads campaign running, I've got some Facebook ads running, I've got an SEO play, maybe an email campaign running, and I'm doing those. And let's say I'm working on local SEO, Google business type things, right? So I have those channels basically that I'm working within, and we get a ton of leads from the Google ad, but they don't buy. And we get maybe half the amount of leads from the local plays, and 80% of them buy. That's easy math. Now we know what to do, and we can put a lot more. We can take so much of that money from those paid things that are typically one of the most expensive channels historically in terms of cost per acquisition of a new prospect or a new lead. We put that towards the channel that is working. Now we're improving efficiencies and volume concurrently. So we're making both things happen at the same time. So just, first, which of these perform at what rate? So if there's good tracking internally when the leads come in, and our client or the business can see, like, okay, I got 100 leads from paid and 100 leads from SEO, those, whatever those channels might be. I got 100 leads from email, just for ease of illustration. And I gave 50 quotes to the email ones. I gave 10 quotes to all the others combined. We know something now. Now we can, focus and intensify our efforts and improve those efficiencies. So that would be the first place to start. Then from there, I'd like to drill down further in the conversation and say, okay, if you got 50 from a paid campaign, what was the feedback from them? Like, were they tire kickers, or what was their intent when they clicked on that ad? Were they hand raisers saying, I've got a problem, I'm looking for a business to solve it? Or were they just educational? In which case, that means that I've got a messaging thing, and all I have to do is, it doesn't mean the channel's not valuable. It means that I need to adjust how I work within that channel and the messaging and intent that I'm addressing there.
Essentially what you're saying is you and sales, or marketing and sales, have to communicate about what they're learning and get better at either running a different campaign or testing something differently. It's not always, oh, this didn't get sales, so it must be horrible. Well,
no. And one of the things that you kind of alluded to this earlier is that, math over mystery, right? And facts over feelings. And so when I say to it, like when a client says to me something like, hey, the leads that are coming out of our social channel, they are not quality leads. It's not going to hurt my feelings for you to tell me that. I'm not going to say, oh, well, this client's unreasonable, I can't work with them. Like, this is just, let me do my job. Like, I know what I'm doing and I can't be coached. It doesn't mean that. It's, if you are dealing with not just us, but any reputable, like really good, trustworthy agency, you have a good relationship, you can provide that feedback candidly. It's not personal. It's, we're trying to grow a business. So give me that feedback and say, the leads from here, they're weak. The leads from here are killing it. These are the things that need to be changed. You can provide that feedback to the agency. And the agency also has to be able to say, okay, well, as I'm seeing these numbers that you're giving me, Mr. Business, then, I see that I dropped 150 leads into your bucket. You're telling me that everything's good, and yet you closed 3. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
And I have to be able to say that and not say like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get fired because he tells me that, because I'm telling them that they have an internal issue that we're willing to help with and provide visibility on. We're willing to shine a spotlight on it so that you can do something about it. But if neither one of us talk, there's no light, we're both in the dark, and we're just doing our level best, but not doing our actual best.
What's interesting to me is the word expectations. The business owner who's paying for the marketing agency has some expectations about the campaigns you're running for them. And so paid campaigns, cash is going out the door. We're getting clicks on ads. We're maybe some sales opportunities, some not. Learning about that. SEO is a slower moving campaign that builds on momentum, but once momentum gets going, especially if you're dominating in a local place, the leads that you should be getting in are, should convert well, because if you're doing a good job with SEO, it means someone's searching for a specific thing with buyer intent and your website pops up. Social might be, hey, look, no one knows who we are. Let's go build some authority with some video and posts about who we are, what we do, and be very educational. So expectations maybe, we won't get leads, but we're going to get eyeballs on our brand. Keith, when you, from a business owner's perspective or director of sales, from that perspective, when you hear the word campaigns and think about, a marketing investment, how do you approach it? How do you coach your customers, your clients to?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I want to make sure is they're bringing the right car out on the track. I think a lot of times business owners think, "Hey, I'm great in what I do," and their work looks great, but they don't realize that they're bringing a station wagon out to that track. Their website does not have the right conversion points on it. They don't speak correctly on their website. I see this all the time. I'll see somebody say, "Hey, I want to sell more paver jobs," and the front of their website says nothing about how they do pavers. So before you get out to the race, we need to make sure that we're prepped and ready to race. And what happens is, and I mean this in the kindest way, but what happens is that business owner looks at marketing and says, "Take my station wagon out to that race and win." And we're like, I can't do that. It's literally impossible. So,
Yeah.
So, and this is the problem that we need to build into this. So I always say, let's start with the foundation. I always think of it like a retaining wall or the foundation of pavers. We need to make sure that foundation is right. So everything that we build on top of that is going to help us win. And so we need to make sure that we're speaking correctly on our website. We need to make sure that we have reputation management campaigns in place for that local SEO and that Google business location. Everything we do off of the foundation of our reputation and how we speak, that's the message to market match within imagery, the content we write, and where we're going to place everything. All of that comes back to that foundation. So if we put a message out on Facebook, well, if we have really bad reputation and our website doesn't speak well, probably going to have a far lower conversion rate than another business owner.
Yeah.
I was talking to a hardscaper over in California, and he was telling me he just feels like, man, I used to be at 1.4 million. Now I'm at 600,000. I don't know what it is. Seems like the economy or something's just not good. Well, I did a planning call with him and I walked him through how, hey, if we look at it like a marketer in your backyard, you have 9 million people in a 25-mile radius of where you live. Just so you understand, I talked to another hardscaper who had about 3 million and he's doing 9 million a year and you're at 600,000. There's plenty of room to grow. And after I talked with him about it and helped him understand the problems with his thinking on the foundation, his target market, the addressable target market opportunity in his area, and the website and how it's communicating and working on his reputation, he was all jazzed up. He was like, sweet, yeah, let's just go step 1, step 2, and then we can start being competitive with some of our local competitors who are already doing far better than we are. So
yeah, when you start getting into this process, I mean, you're talking about hardscape construction or landscape construction companies, but the same is true whether you're an HVAC guy or an electrician or a plumber or a roofer. All of these same things still apply. And so to have something like this, let's say you've got a mature business, you're making 3, 4, 5 million a year. Then the next level is really, if you're not closing the loop yet, where do you get incremental improvement? How do you get incremental improvement? It's kind of like, okay, we've got a good car on the track. We're in some races, but we haven't, I'll use the F1 analogy, we haven't hit the podium, the top 3 positions yet. Well, now what do you have to do to get better, to be more competitive, to get more jobs away from competition, to improve 1 to 2 to 3% in close rate? What does that matter? Oh, well, that could be 20, 30 jobs, depending on how much volume you're doing. So it is applicable as you move up the chain in your stage of business, where you have a process around, what races the planning you're doing for your marketing and sales team. Here's another piece that maybe when you're talking about close the loop marketing, these are the things that you're doing. You've got a plan, you've got goals, they're communicated. You've got the right team doing the right work, and the work gets done on time. You're getting leads into the pipeline, and you're closing the loop, and you're making sales. And this last piece is where closing the loop really, I believe, helps. It's all about getting better together. Hey, we're doing good now, or we're not doing so good now, or we're doing good on the parts of a marketing. Like maybe this one campaign we're doing great, but these two other, we got to work on that. Or maybe we have a salesperson that was doing great, but now is in a slump. What's going on there? Or vice versa. Like we swapped out the salesperson because we had to get better at that. So it's the getting better together part, I think, is the biggest value for businesses, whether you're hardscape construction, or any other type of contractor out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tony, I was thinking like what you're saying here. The biggest data points that can blind growth or slow growth down, missing those, like agencies, if we don't get this feedback, we rely on all the C-suite initials, right? Like we look at our cost per click or our CTR, our click-through rate, or our CPO or CPI, or, all these different things. And they are valuable data points. They are. But what they don't tell us is, again, which leads became customers, the average revenue per customer or average revenue per sale, the customer lifetime value, right? We don't, like, if we sell them once, if we get them once, do we get them twice? Do we get them 3 times? Do we get them for a year? We don't know that without this feedback. And so, or even just which products you sell best. You might have, to Keith's example earlier, somebody might want to sell pavers, but they sell outdoor lighting. That's what they sell a ton of. But if we don't get that feedback, then, we're kind of like operating kind of with one arm tied behind our back. And in almost every business success coaching program, there are some key elements and steps, right, that are pretty constant. They just changed the words for them, right? So I was reading Felix's book, Keith, we were talking about that. And, it's like ideate, prototype, test, implement, or deploy, right? So you come up with your idea, what your service or product's going to be, what's going to make it unique, and then you're going to test it. And then what was in the email? Quantify, right? So you're going to test and get results, right? But if those results don't make our way back to us, we never have a chance to finish getting all the way around the horn and re-ideate on how to make things better, right? So we never get a full deployment, and we never get to re-ideate and keep that spiral going until we're tighter and tighter. So, and that's like a universal theme. Like somebody's talking about, come up with your idea, basically, figure out what it looks like to sell it or to produce it or to deliver it, and then do it, then measure what you did, and then go figure out how to do it better. That's always the same concept. The problem is that in these relationships, nobody tells us how they're doing. So we never get to the part of doing it better.
So taking that into consideration, Keith, what would you want to learn from your sales people, whether they're closing deals or not closing deals? It might be the same thing. It could be different thing. But if you're getting opportunities to close business and you're closing it, what do you want to know? And you're not closing it, what do you want to know?
Yeah. I mean, it really comes down to knowing, if you step back, what's coming in the pipeline to start. So we need to know from lead to estimate. And if our lead to estimate conversion rate is looking solid, then it's our estimate to jobs closed rate after that. Then I'm looking at the average sale price of those jobs to see if they're closing them at the right average. And typically, if we see a new person come on board, they haven't done any sort of sales. Their, of course, sales rate's going to be more like 10 to 15%. And then we see, as they continue to progress and learn the sales process, they're going to be closer to 40% in their close rates. So those are the biggest things to look at. And across the board, that's typically what most of us business owners are looking for in the hardscape space. We want to make sure that we have the right close rate from lead to estimate and then estimate to close. Now, as far as that actually being tracked, that's a whole different story. Because most business owners know that in their head, and they do that for themselves, but and it's all in their head, but they're not really crunching the data with a true CRM in place. Right. So they're just kind of thinking about the last week, or the last month. So inevitably, you just can't keep that organized. So
Keith, you said something there, and I was just thinking, like, would you rather, as a business owner, would you rather guess what's working or know what's working? Because that's really what it comes down to. If you don't have tracking and you don't have a good CRM and you don't have good reporting, then you are guessing. And I mean, there's just no two ways about it. You're guessing.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all think we all have the very best sales teams out there. And when they tell us that a lead was it wasn't a good lead, I'm sure we believe that. And it's always 100% true. But there are probably times where there was some quality in there that, some quality leads that got missed for whatever reason. Maybe the sales team had a bad day. Maybe they were off. Maybe they were sick. Maybe one got slipped between the funnels. Who knows? But if we're not aligned on the goals and we're not tracking the full customer journey, then getting that post-sale reporting, then you're not really working with your marketing resource like it's a part of your team. You're treating it like somebody that you've hired. And the best successful relationships are when a business works with their marketing team, not just hire them and trust, just say, go do your thing, go do what you do. You guys know how to do SEO, go do that. We do, and we'll go do that. But it works best when we're working together and we're all part of the same team.
Yeah, I think a really good example of iteration would be just running our Facebook ads. When we launched our Facebook ads, and it depends for every company. Not every hardscape company is doing the exact same type of outdoor living transformations. So say you want to focus on natural stone retaining walls, which is what we focus on. Well, we need to understand what the target market wants to see for that in the imagery. So it's not just about turning the light switch on and launching Facebook ads. You might actually have the wrong imagery there, and you might have the wrong collage of imagery for them to look at too. So you want to make sure that looks appropriate for them. And then you want to make sure you have the right messaging and the content you're saying as well. So you have to iterate on that. So as the business owners over here saying, great, I'm going to hire this marketing team to go turn on Facebook ads, essentially. Well, there's an iterative process to that, and you have to give it time. You could call that the tune-up phase, essentially. And we got to make sure this thing's really tuned and it's working well. And guess what? When it's really tuned and working well, people change their mind. There's this thing called ad fatigue that happens. Mm-hmm. And so we look at the frequency at which those ads are showing to the same types of people, and we have to make some adjustments again. So we have to get new imagery, and we have to come at them in new ways on Facebook. So if you're over here as the salesperson just looking at your marketing team and not engaged in that process of closing the loop, like, hey, how are the leads? Well, the leads, let's just say, aren't very good. They're not closing. Maybe you're getting a lot of leads, but they're not closing. And the people are thinking, hey, I saw these pictures and I thought you did this thing, when it's really not a thing that the business does. And that happens all the time too. So then you communicate that back to the marketing team. They say, okay, great. Let's change the imagery to the thing that you actually do, and let's change the verbiage a little bit. Boom. Then you get that nailed in. And this is the rule in marketing. All the difficulty and money that you paid out to figure out what works, when you do figure out what works, it will return tenfold what you put into it. And beyond. So if you just keep on switching and not closing the loop and let that process run, you're going to get slammed back into wasting more money, and you'll never get to that 10x return plus that you can get in your business.
That is such a poignant thing to say, because how many times have we come across companies that have told us, oh, I've tried this like 3 times. I know I need to do it, but it doesn't work. That is something that is a situation where that business owner, that business doesn't have the right relationship and the process around closing the loop, the sales loop. Because if they do have that relationship and they are closing the sales loop, this getting better together is the piece. And what happens when you have companies that can run campaigns, to what you're saying, Keith, is like, look, we hired somebody, they do good work. They have a manager, they have specialists, they send us reports, they go over the review with us, but for whatever reason, we're just not making the progress we thought we'd make. So they're putting money in and they're getting work done. And that is one level, right? And I think business owners have to go through this level. You have to do this. This is like table stakes, right? But what you guys are really talking about, what we're talking about here, is where you look at things in the sales and marketing process, where you identify and solve problems together. That's really what you're talking about. And it could be multiple reasons why things aren't going as well as they could. But you have a relationship, and you pay for a relationship with the right kind of resources, people, to help identify problems, be able to communicate those, and solve the problems together. Because it could be a salesperson or a business owner that comes up with insight that marketing isn't even thinking about. and vice versa. This is the valuable relationship that you need to have, whether you have in-house marketing and sales or whether you outsource it to an agency or whether you have a contractor. If you get to a point where you have a proactive relationship where you're identifying and solving problems together, then and you are clear on what your goals are, that's a true close the sales loop kind of environment. So when we think about this, now it's like, great, okay, bought into closing the sales loop with my marketing team. Let's talk about, what do you do first? Well, the first thing is, and Keith, you started to get into this when you talked about sales, but the first thing is you got to have a baseline set of performance. Now, this is a big, nasty spreadsheet that we use, but it's like your campaigns are drawing traffic. Those traffic generate leads. You get quotes out, you make sales, and you generate revenue. And so you have an average revenue per sale or per job. You've got a sales conversion rate, a quote conversion rate, and a lead conversion rate. So there's a little bit of work to do ahead in advance. And some companies are at a stage where they don't have this data readily available. Other companies have been running CRM for years, and they're like, oh, we just haven't thought about it this way. Let's get it into a sheet. So getting that first baseline performance, because you can't improve unless you have a baseline to improve from. And you also can't have SMART goals unless you have a baseline to look at it and go, oh, now, last January, we brought in 5 sales worth $50K at $10K. So this year we want to do 50 sales. Is that a SMART goal? Is that realistic? The R in SMART. So you have to be able to have that level of conversation, and a baseline is really, a place to start. I will say this, smaller companies, the baseline might be 0, but every company has a baseline. So we're coming up here a little bit on the end. So what happens to get started, most of the time we just have a Google sheet that we start in, keep it simple, right? And then we get into using a CRM. And as we do this, the thing that happens is you learn like the core basic, just Google Sheets, but it's how can you do it quickly and inexpensively? And some companies have CRMs, but they aren't even flushed out. They don't have a lot of automation tied to things. They might be emailing and not texting, or they might be, they might not even look at pipeline. It all depends on what's in there. There's a lot to implement a CRM and get it cranking correctly. So when we talk about the steps, and I'll bring Chris, you and Keith back in on this when we talk about the giveaway here, but when we talk about the critical steps, it's really just 3, and that's establish the baseline, then review all those marketing metrics, and close the sales loop with the sales part of it. So it's very straightforward, but getting it set up can be a little bit hairy as you get into it. And we want to make sure we have visibility on all of these different metrics for your business. Before we talk about the giveaway, anything you guys would like to add about the steps? Did I miss anything?
We do have a couple questions.
We do. Okay.
Yeah, awesome.
So let's jump into that. And then we'll go back to the giveaway.
Cool. One of the questions here is, a lot of companies are taking the personal side of customer relations out and only using AI for marketing and appointment setting. What are your thoughts on AI handling the marketing and customer support? It's a good question.
It's a really good question. Very timely.
Right. Yeah. I think AI is going to be part of this for quite some time. Chris, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm happy to. There's a lot of experimentation going on. A lot of companies are trying it and taking it out. They're automating what they can. They're automating things they probably shouldn't. In some cases, some people are pushing the bubble as far as they can. My personal assessment or feelings on it right now, AI is valuable. I use it for research. I use it to, help generate and brainstorm and organize my notes and organize my tasks. I use it for a lot of organization tactics. I don't use it for like spinning up content much. I'll use it as a starting point and do some research there, but I still think you need that spark, that creativity, and to come up with a lot of content items and tone of voice and how to talk and how to manage things. So. And I also think that there's a level of, I think that some of the AI chat bots and supports and voice assistants, things like that, they're going to improve. They're just going to get better. I mean, they're already miles ahead of what they were 2 years ago, and we were listening to them then, and we didn't always know it. Sometimes we do now, and sometimes we know. But I like to still have a high level of supervision and critical thinking from a person involved in these things. I think that there's a place for it. I also think that it really depends on the industry that you're in, and it depends on the service or the product. If you're an e-commerce web store, then, there might be an opportunity for it to do some things, but I don't necessarily know that I want it writing out the names and descriptions of the products when it can't recognize the image well enough or know the quality or the composition. So there's a place. To what extent? I think we're probably pushing it a little further, but on the other side of all discomfort comes growth. So
yeah, we are monitoring the use of AI pretty seriously. We know people are using it for asking questions and even search. And we can monitor search. Which AI bots are or which AI platforms are driving traffic and all that. So it's there. I would also say it depends on the level of business you're at and your maturity level. So one of the first, I'll call it dumb AI, is workflow automation in your marketing. When someone fills out a form, do you have automation set up behind that form, whether it's downloading something or requesting something? Do you have a bunch of automation that triggers everything that needs to happen? Is that properly set up? If you don't have that properly set up, before you jump all the way into AI, just get some basics in. The chatbot experience is getting a lot better. We are building out some AI technology with Fannit that we're testing. That's the other thing that we're doing. So there's no easy answer, but there's pieces of it that you need to use, and eventually, it's like every other marketing tech that's out there. When the new CRM came about, that terminology, customer relations management, everybody's like, oh, CRM. Now it's like old hat.
Yeah.
But it was the first piece of technology. So we're all going to have to learn how to use this. I think it might happen a little bit faster, the use of it, but we definitely want to test it out. And there's nothing about, I guess, creativity, there's a fine line between being creative and just getting work done, and getting information. It's definitely good for getting information and making you think about it.
Yeah.
Do you have any more?
I think just considering input, the AI is only as good as the input of the human.
Yep.
And right now, we're all learning how to use AI.
Oh, he froze.
We lost him.
He'll be back. I think there was another question though, Tony. Oh, he's back. Are you back there, Keith? We lost you for a second.
Sorry. Yeah. I was going to say it's all the input of the person who's managing the AI. So how they're using their prompts and how much work they're doing in it. And most of us aren't used to it. It reminds me of when Google first came out and people didn't understand how to search in Google. But at the same time, Google's AI wasn't as good at giving people the results that they wanted. And now that's advanced significantly. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, the second question is there a CRM software that you recommend to make it more simple to track? Not everyone enjoys Sheets.
This is true. Once you're moving past Sheets, definitely Go High Level we're most familiar with. There's also HubSpot. There's a bunch of different CRMs, and they all pretty much function the same or have the same function. It's kind of like, if you think about it from a marketing perspective, working in Go High Level, it's like if we're a mechanic, we work on BMWs, but we could also fix a Honda or a Chevy because they're cars. But we're just more familiar with the Go High Level. There's a lot of snapshots or templates that can be used and to speed things up and be more efficient. And so I would say out of the gate, if you don't have one, Go High Level is a good one, especially in the home service contractor niche or sector. But yeah, that's how I would answer that. Chris, do you want to add on to that, or?
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. Again, it depends on the industry. So that's not a stamped or a template answer really, because some industries, there are going to be CRMs that are out there too. Like if you're a retail auto dealership, you probably want to be doing something like Vin Solutions. I mean, they're the best at what they do, or arguably one of the top 2 or 3, something along those lines, as opposed to a high level or a HubSpot snapshot that doesn't know that industry.
Yeah.
High Level and HubSpot and Zoho and, you know, some of the other notable like
Yeah.
broadband CRMs can be tailored to a lot of industries. That's what makes them so appealing. So, you know, we can load those snapshots, like you said, on a High Level platform. But you know, to answer the question, like you might want to look at some of the industry specific ones, and then also, you know, you can connect with an agency, with one of our team, even not a sales pitch there, but, you know, and do an assessment on, you know, what that business is and what the stages that need to go through that pipeline, what you need to put in and what you need to get out. And then we might have a better assessment or insight to share.
So you're saying a car dealer and a med spa might not use the same CRM?
No, not at all. I would use Fin Solutions in the car business, probably Zenota or Aesthetics Pro or something like that for med spa, and, you know, maybe Builder Trend for like a remodeling, you know, contract or something like that. So many different ones that are out there.
Well, do we have any more questions? I'm kind of anxious to give this thing away.
That's it.
That's it. Okay, those are good questions. Good questions. So I'll go back, and what we're willing to do to give away, Chris's email is in the bottom right, is if you are not closing the sales loop properly right now, or think you are not and want help with this, we can set up the process and the measurement of all the marketing and sales pieces to close the sales loop for you for free. It's a one-time thing. Only people who are attending this, if you email chris@fannit.com. Now, we're also going to post this video on YouTube, so I bet Chris is going to get some other ones, and it'll be like, sorry, we charge for that. So I want to say that out loud. If you didn't attend this webinar, you're not going to get that for free. And that's a pretty high value, because there's a little bit of work that goes into it from both our side and the client side, but it is well worth the value, well worth the time.
That's the thing. If it goes from being an expense to an investment, then everybody wins.
Yeah. Sometimes that's just a mind shift.
Yeah. Sometimes. Usually.
Yeah. Right.
Usually.
So that's what we want to give away. We thank everybody for showing up. Appreciate the questions. Those are really good questions. And thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Right.